Hello and welcome back to Rage Gaming and more Path of Exile 2. Today we've got a kind of an important topic, and that is exalted orbs and divine orbs. I have just spent like an absolute pile of them as I'm playing this new character. I made them a couple of days ago, we're at 81 now, almost 82, and then of course I'm gearing and powering them up. And through that I'm spending a lot of exalts, hundreds, and I'm depleting my store of divines now. So how am I currently farming exalts and divines in a reasonably effective way, despite not being on a super powerful build in a true endgame character setup? Well, that's because there are cheap methods and easy things you can do to make reasonable exalts and even divines long term without being hyper endgame or, super geared. These methods I'm going to talk about, they're going to be significantly better when you are super strong and hyper geared. It's only going to get better as you're able to do harder content and get better rewards. But how it all works, how to maximize that setup, that's what I want to talk about today. So we'll start with the absolute cheapest method you could possibly think of, where you could be doing this during the campaign. It's very simple. When we go to the currency tab, there are a bunch of currencies that you use to enhance gear. So there's the Arcanist Etcher, Armor Scraps, the Whetstones, Blacksmith Whetstones, and finally the Artificer Orbs. We're using these on gear pretty often in big number. And basically what I'm suggesting you do is sell them, because they're worth a little bit. The Armor Scraps are worth generally the most, whereas the Whetstones and the Etchers are a lot worse. And then you've got the Artificer Orbs as well. But overall, you can generate these by using gold, and there's no requirement on this. So again, this is probably the easiest, lowest level one you can do. If you've got a big stack of gold and you're not really using it for much anymore, like me, I'm sat on 2 million here, just every now and then, go turn that into some of these resources and sell them. All you need to do is go back to each town, starting with Act 1 and work your way up. Go to any of the merchants, the vendors, and just write in quality, and it'll highlight anything that has superior in the name or that vibe. Then you just buy those for whatever gold it costs. In Act 1, 2, and 3, it's a literal pittance, it's irrelevant, but make sure you're also buying anything that has sockets on them too, for the Artificer Orbs. Then with these bought up items, you regularly take them to the salvage bench and just break them down into the materials, selling whatever you get. This way, in literally just a couple minutes, you can get yourself a couple exalted orbs, which is certainly a lot more than 0 if you're going through the campaign. Not to mention, when you do go check the vendors, you might find an item that looks relevant, jewelry for example, with resistances, or boots with multiple resistance and movement speed. These actually sell reasonably to other players. So you never know. These NPCs will reset every time you level up, or after a certain amount or enough time has passed. Next is one that we pretty much all know, but I must say in this video, the % increased rarity of items found. I think we all know at this point that you need that on your gear. It's like taking an item that drops and then rolling a higher item because you have this increased rarity of items. Now, based on testing that's been going on in the community, it seems like it does indeed have diminishing returns on your person. So you want to amass roughly towards 100% total increased rarity of the % on your gear to maximize the potential that you have. Going beyond that doesn't seem worth it, so that's a relief. Either way, make sure you've got that going for all content you're doing, like what we're about to talk about. This is one of the easiest and most reliable sources of farming in my opinion. It is indeed the Trial of Chaos, and you're essentially farming soul calls. Now, depending on the type of Trial of Chaos you do, you can get more than 1, 2, multiple of these per run, and they are indeed sellable on the currency exchange. And we can have a look at some of them that are much more expensive than others. The one that you care most about, of course, is the one to do with rarity of items. The Azkaper, which basically, if we take a look at the Exalted Orbs, is 250 Exalted Orbs right now. It was nearly 300 earlier. I think it's pretty late right now, so it makes sense. But you do one run of the Trial of Chaos, you get one of these. That's like 2 Divine Orbs right there. So every single time you roll one of these dropping, you have a 1 in 15 chance to get towards 300 Exalted Orbs just like that. So it's worth it on that fact alone. The thing is, you get multiple at the end of a good run, so that's rolling that dice multiple times. That isn't to say that the others aren't also worth stuff like maximum resistances, or of course the all-important chaos resistance, but they're costing, say, towards 5 orbs each. But you get 2 of those, it's 10 orbs. How fast can you run these? Well, I did one in 10 minutes earlier on this new character, so even in a dire situation, that would be reasonably towards 60 Exalted Orbs on the cause alone when I'm rolling poorly on them. But of course, you're also going to get other items while we do this run, such as Chaos Orbs, which you can sell. You're getting plenty of those. There's Exalted Orbs that do drop during the run, which is obviously nice, and there's always that potential for a Divine. There are 3 kinds of Trial of Chaos though, which is cool because it basically means you get to decide the difficulty you're going going to do, so anyone can really do it. The first one you do during the campaign, and that's the 4th floor coin. What we're looking at though, for reasonable purposes, is a 7th floor at least, because you're going to get to kill 2 bosses in that, which is nice. Get lots of drop potential, you'll get 2 soul cores at the end. You know, it's like, to me, the bare minimum. When should you be doing a 7 level Trial of Chaos? Well, probably by the time you're around red level maps, so tier 11 plus. If you're clearing maps of that level, you're probably fine to do the 7-stage Chaos Trial. Obviously, they come in different levels, but the 7th floor starts, I believe, at level 60 and beyond. So you can actually do a lower level one, have a really easy time, get the cores at the end and then sell them. Clearing it, I don't know, maybe 7 or 8 minutes if it's a super low level one. The thing is, when you go up to the 10 floor version, you're obviously going to get the much better rewards. You'll have better chances of a divine randomly dropping and the loot in general because the mobs are higher level. That starts at level 75 and beyond, and that is indeed where the Pinnacle boss is at the end of that run. You can't just challenge it though, you need a key, which is formed of 3 fragments. Where do you get those fragments? Here in the Trial of Chaos, in a 10 stage or 10 level Trial of Chaos run. You can also find those on the currency exchange. Under the Fragments tab, it's Cowardly Fate, Deadly Fate, and Victorious Fate. Now right now it's pretty late, they're worth about 8 exalted orbs each. But that's Cowardly Fate and Victorious Fate. Deadly Fate, the most expensive one, is worth nearly 30 exalted orbs. So you could get one of these dropping, and then boom, just an extra 30 orbs just like that. So ideally, you'd be strong enough to be doing the 10 floor version. Like I said, the stronger you are, the harder content, the better rewards. You'll get more soul cores, you'll have better exalted orb drop rates, and maybe that divine drop, which would be amazing, but you're also getting fragments and other general drops you might sell. Even in the 10-minute run that I did earlier, I actually got some really nice gloves that I'm currently listing for 1 divine, so here's hoping. The only real question here, I would say, is how do you get these coins? Well, you can get them on the trade website. They're generally listed all at 1 exalt each. So it's not even expensive to pick one up and go run it. As long as you're strong enough and ready to, you should be fine. On that note, there's the question of, if you are strong enough, why not fight the Pinnacle boss, the Trial Master, yourself? Well, you certainly can, but it's all about his drops. The benefit of the other Pinnacle bosses is that you'll get Atlas skill points, making the events, the activities you do, like Breach and so on, significantly more valuable. With the Trial Master, it's just whatever he drops. The only other real reason to do it would be, say, your 4th Ascend, but we're really not talking about that. So for now, I wouldn't recommend it. Sell the fragments. In regards to the negatives to take during the trial run at each step, I always advise you never take obstacle modifiers. The ones like impending doom that puts circles on you, or when enemies die it sends a projectile at you. Anything that kind of messes with your movement is bad. If it's going to CC you, it's bad. I find that the first stage of a damage increase, like they get extra chaos, is not ideal, but it's not too invasive. Whereas the defense breaker that halves your defense is nightmarishly bad. Contrary to that, the missile related ones that have turrets firing lightning or fire, they're really just not invasive or relevant. And so I also avoid things that chase me, like the stalking shades or volatile fiends. Those are quite annoying too. Things that I find a lot more manageable by comparison are, say, monster speed, where they gain skill speed. It's very manageable. Some things like lessened reach actually could be beneficial to you. If your projectile speed being slower is a good thing, it can be a big damage boost. Not to mention there's that one that increases rare mobs as well, which is actually good as well. So yeah, anything that messes with your gameplay too much or makes you super squishy, just avoid. So that's an incredible source of farm, I think, and it's great because we can change the level of difficulty based on where you personally are at. This is where we're going to start to talk about Atlas mapping and what is probably the most effective thing that you can do. There are many kinds of activities, but the big four, of course, are Breach, Delirium, Expedition, and Ritual. Right off the bat, Ritual's a bit RNG. You might get an incredible omen and that'd be awesome, but it's not the most farmable thing. It's just nice when it's there to do at the same time. Expedition does have a lot of potential. We do have a video coming up about that. But Delirium, in terms of Pinnacle content and the actually progressing of that skill tree, is probably one of the most overtuned difficult things. Meanwhile, Breach and the mob density is absolutely perfect. And there are a variety of ways you can hyper enhance it, and so that's what I'm going to suggest. The problem with this is that if you have 0 in the actual skill tree, your experience is going to be way worse than someone who has it. While you absolutely can farm it and there are ways to enhance it, it's still going to be valuable. It's not remotely comparable as to when you actually have the points. The reason for that is because of passives like Crumbling Walls. Maps that contain breaches have a chance to have an extra breach, or 3 or 10 more breaches. Then you're obviously aiming for Rising Pyre to massively improve the monster density. What can we do outside of that though if you're not currently at that point? Well, the usual strats apply, so let's blast them really quick. Again, you need to push towards about 100% increased rarity of items. I've already covered that. But outside of that, we'll be making sure to run setups that improve maximum rarity, quantity of drops, and hopefully the amount of rares too. This can be done largely on the Waystone that you're actually engaging with. Finding affixes like increased number of rare monsters, increased quantity and rarity, which by the way is just one combined affix, or straight percent increased rarity of items found in this area. You're looking for a combination of those, so what you'd be doing generally is taking a Waystone and maybe alching it to see what you get. Here we have that increased number of rare monsters, magic monsters not ideal but it's still good, but no rarity increase, no quantity increase. I could commit to this and add exalts to it, but the thing is, the ones that we care about, they're all actually prefixes. So if we hover over it, you can see that one of these is a prefix, another is, and that's it. So if we exalt, we can only add one more prefix and one more suffix. All we care about is adding another prefix in the hopes of getting quantity or rarity, and so I don't think it's ultimately that worth it in this case. Now, on top of that, as I've shown before, you can distill on a Waystone to modify things. These come from running Delirium, but the cheaper ones can be bought via the currency exchange very easily. We just right click them and pull up the menu, you put that in, and then there we go, it gives it the modifier. This increases magic monsters, so it's not exactly ideal, but it's fine, that's the cheapest one higher. Next we have Guilt. This increases pack size, again fine but not ideal, whereas Greed is much more relevant, increasing the rarity of items found in the area. The more you put in, the more that actually becomes, but then you become more delirious, making that map harder. So it's what you're willing to risk. There's nothing wrong with running most of them as a single if you're someone who's struggling to clear right now at whatever tier you're doing. But I would say Guilt and Greed are going to be the two kind of most reliable, cheapest options that you have. But there's also Paranoia, which is obviously rarer and more expensive, and that is because it increases the amount of rare numbers, the third really relevant thing we're interested in. Obviously, you can also use the tablets to modify things even further in smaller numbers, but why not take it? Just as before, you can take this and make it magic, and there we go, we got exactly what we're looking for. Increased rarity, as well as we're looking for quantity, as well as more rare monsters. You can add only 2 though before it caps out, but at least we got 1 in this case. As I'm sure you know though, once you complete a tower, you can click on it and put the tablet in, and that creates a radius around it, affecting the nearby maps. The thing is, you can get multiple towers going, so you can really stack up these modifiers and actually start to see some relevant increases. Like we have increased magic monsters here, and increased rarity of items, 2 perfect ones for what we're looking for. So this could be a great option right here. We have the Breach, and we have Irradiation and Corruption. These add a monster level. The higher monster level, the better drop potential there is. And with that, you'd be ideally putting in a Waystone that's the highest level possible. That's going to be a tier 15, unless you get a Waystone that's corrupted, which might be a tier 16. In regards to setting up the maps though, the way that you path is important. You obviously want to save a good map that you want to clear with a Breach. So you go through the empty maps, or the maps that are generally going to be bad for Breach in general. So an open map like Savannah here is incredible because it's wide open, you're able to spread out and rush in any direction you want, maintaining that mob density and maximizing the Breach. If by comparison you're in somewhere that's kind of like tight, like a cavern, caves in general, or environments that are tight, you might find yourself not really able to progress, you might come across a dead end even, and then you waste the potential of that Breach. So open maps, that's what you're aiming for to actually get your breaches set up on. That will be things like, yes, Savannah as I said, but the Steppe, Willow, Rustball, Creek, these are incredible options thanks to being open to maximize that density. Outside of the caves, as I said, I would avoid things like the Val Factory and Foundry as other examples. But when you're ready, you want to take one of these towers and place the Breach Waystone in it to spawn a load of breaches around the target. But there's one specific kind of modifier you can get only on Breach tablets that will give increased chance for multiple breaches, much like the Atlas skill tree we talked about earlier. So outside of wanting rare monsters, quantity, and rarity of items found, you'd also be looking for this unique modifier for a Breach tablet, since if you get to do 2 breaches in a run, that's significantly more potential then 1. On the topic of setting everything up though, obviously we need a quick mention of the Atlas tree. This is a great setup for the purpose of farming breaches and generally endgame content like that. There are issues with this tree if you are trying to do other things at the same time, but generally let's just cover the things that are so valuable about this for breach farming. Pathing to the right, you're going to find a lot of nodes that increase the rarity of the items you find. Pathing around to Lucky Pillage, we're going to get those two mods that we care so much about, quantity and rarity in one, so obviously that's super valuable. Coming down this way, we can hit Grueling Journey, increased effect of the modifiers on your Waystone. And the wording here is important, for each explicit modifier. So the more modifiers you have on a Waystone, the more valuable this node is. So if you say aren't 6 modding every Waystone you're running, then this node does lose potential value, and that's something important to think about. Then of course we loop down to Deadly Evolution, since rare and unique monsters on the map have 1 to 2 additional modifiers. That's incredible because it's every rare and every unique monster. There's another node that we don't have that I do think is great, but it's not as good. Twin Threats. 1 rare monster on your map gets duplicated. Amazing, twice the drops from 1 rare. But the problem with that is that it's just one of the rares on the map. It's not actually going to affect breach all that much. Meanwhile, this is going to be every rare, such as logically all of the rares you encounter during a breach. Anyway, we come up towards the other keystone, Unstable Energies. 25% more effective prefix modifiers or 25% more effective suffix. Obviously, on that one, we always want the prefix one because that's where you're going to find your rarity increase, your quantity increase. That's what we care about juicing our Waystones for, as I was trying to explain. So obviously it's very potent if it hits the right side of them. And that brings us to the top of the Atlas tree, where there's a lot of stuff to do with the tablets, increased quantity of tablets, its chance to double the effect of them. Obviously, if we've got quantity and rarity, it could double the value of the current tablet we've got. On that note, we have intensification, which gives you 3% increased effect of the modifiers on your Waystones for each tower affecting the map area. So this becomes more and more valuable the more towers are hitting the maps that you're doing. You want to have 2 to 3 towers actively hitting the maps that you're running for all the perks of that, and this just makes that even better. Then the various nodes around here will also increase the effect of those tablets, but that leaves us with just kind of 3 points, and so a pretty effective thing to do is just go for Rising Danger, increasing the amount of rare monsters. That's not bad either. But the warning I want to give is that if you're just doing general mapping, you might not be sustaining your Waystones nearly as well anymore because you've not got something like Fortunate Path, or for example the 5 nodes here that give you the 10% chance to find Waystones in general. So if you're specifically farming breach and you're nice and set up, this is a great setup. But just remember to have your Atlas tree set up for what your purpose is. Breach itself then has incredible drops that you want to juice as much as possible. Using the Waystone, using tablets and towers you've set up around the map, being on an ideal open map, and being delirious with the right mods as well, there are many ways to super enhance the run that you're doing, on top of the Atlas skill tree itself. If you're able to absolutely destroy in terms of mob clear, you'll be spawning so many drops, farming so many splinters, and hopefully getting good currency drops along the way. And so, ultimately, the harder you set it up, the more potential rewards are on the table. I think these methods are pretty well known, but it's important to talk about it for the purpose of this video. Of the 4 activities, I think the breach is the most approachable because the splinters that drop, you're going to be able to form that into the actual shard to fight the Pinnacle boss, get your points, enhance it massively with just 1 point with the Crumbling Ruins perk, and in general, I think scale this activity the best, the fastest. Okay, so that's breach explained, but there's also the Pinnacle aspect of this. You're gathering all those splinters by doing them. That's amazing. You get 300 of them, you get the 1 Pinnacle attempt. This, again, as I was saying, is one of the easier of the specific activities, the seasonal activities, to challenge for the relevant Pinnacle. You get so many splinters through the activity, and by really juicing things up, you get so much more. So you get the 300 splinters, you form the stone, you put it into the realm gate, and that puts you into that unique run, where you need to have high enough clear speed to actually, kill the enemies, progress the breach, and ultimately reach the boss. This section does have a pile of loot at the end, which could be useful for selling stuff, but the Pinnacle boss, should you be doing him? Or should you be selling those splinters for value? Ultimately, it's up to you. Do you have a build strong enough to beat him? But my strong advice for you is that you need to go for Zest if you do not have at least 3 breach Pinnacle points. As I showed earlier, those 3 points go into the Crumbling Walls and lead into Rising Pyre. Those are going to massively improve your experience farming breaches, and so you want them, and you want them ASAP. So even if farming the breach Pinnacle boss isn't valuable for his drops or something, you still want those points because it makes breach farming that much more valuable. And that isn't to say that you don't want to kill him for a 4th time to get the final point, it's just nowhere near as impactful. He does drop pretty impactful uniques that you can't really get anywhere else, like Hand of Wisdom and Action, a great stat stacking unique, but the problem with that is that the price has fallen and fallen. And with Breach being, say, the most commonly done Pinnacle boss, because of what I was saying, the value of his specific items have been going down. The Hand of Wisdom gloves, they're worth, say, like 3 to 4, maybe 5 divines right now, and that's still high value. You'll also get a ton of catalysts and Breach rings to potentially sell. So while you're getting the Pinnacle points, I recommend it. But while you're not, it's going to lead to breaking relatively even if you're buying, say, the splinters. But if you're running them, it could be something that would be worth doing. But yeah, I think I'll leave it there for this. That's 3 kind of main things you can be doing. One super easy, one you can modify in difficulty, and one you ideally want to stack up and juice as much as possible to push as far as you can to greatly increase the drops that you're getting and the amount of them. If you have anything to add to these topics, then let us know in the comments. But for now, I've been Hollow, you've been you. Thanks for watching. See you next time.
Josh, Cotton, and Hollow with the videos, dropping the humor like a hammer on your tippy toes, bringing entertainment on a daily arrangement to take our insanity and turn it into entertainment. Yes, I said entertainment twice, to reiterate that it is nice to look into your faces on a mostly daily basis when you let us in your homes to make the whole world our stage. Goodbye.